Welcome back. I'm one of the developers working on Dwarf, a tower defense dungeon crawler RPG. There's a link in the description, please check it out. Okay, I got this character sent to me by Hexagon Nico, who's working on an RPG. Okay, so first of all, this is really good. I love the character design, I love the shading. You're a pretty good pixel artist, man. Keep at it. However, I do want to point out that a lot of these gradients that you did, a lot of this shading that you did, it goes unnoticed because when you have a tiny sprite in your game and the camera's zoomed out, you can't see some of that shading that you did there. I mean, if you want it to be subtle, that's cool, but probably my first tip would be to increase the contrast in all of this. So for example, the nose here, I would go lighter and try to increase the contrast on that. So that way it's just more noticeable. Another way to make this look brighter without making the color too much brighter is by making the colors around it darker. So for example, if I make this section darker, or here, you know, like this whole area, now you can see in this preview that it's much more noticeable, the nose area. I don't think that's quite necessary, maybe here and here, but that's something to keep in mind. Maybe just make the colors around darker. I'm gonna make these lighter as well. You can barely tell that there's a color difference between some of these. I would skip, do bigger changes between the colors when you're shading. And if we go here to the paint bucket tool and we have contiguous turned on, what'll happen when you paint bucket an area is that it'll only change, hold on, let me make this even brighter. It'll only change that one pixel, right? But if contiguous is turned off, then every pixel of that color in the canvas changes. So as you can see, the ears and the feet got brighter. I think that color is a little too bright. I'm just gonna do a little bit brighter here. And I think I'm gonna make this one a little bit brighter. By the way, I'm using Sprite. It's a great pixel art program, and there's a link in the description. I'm not sponsored by them. I get a tiny little kickback, so if you use that link. In the ears here, you can barely tell the color difference in the preview as well. So in this case, I would probably go darker with this area. And there's a couple of other parts in the body that I think we can darken up a little bit more as well. So some areas maybe make them lighter, some areas maybe make them darker. This part right here, I would make darker as well, but you don't just want to go down to make things darker, because check it out. We made this darker, but it lost the color that it had. So whenever you're making things darker, make sure that you still keep color in there. So we can even go down and to the right. That way we still maintain the color of that fur, you know, because you don't just want to always... a good way to blend is to take a color, lower the alpha, and then just draw over another color. And now that's how those two colors kind of like blended into each other. It's a great way to create transitions between colors or do shading, etc. I'm not going to give you much more feedback on this character because I think that this character design is really good. This line going across looks maybe a little bit odd. And for the shading here, I would actually go dark under the arms. So for example, it's a little bit hard. I know the density here is pretty small, but it's a little bit hard to tell what the design of this jacket is. So I might simplify it. A couple things that I would probably do is, I don't really get why it's shaded here. I would shade under the head. So shading under the head kind of makes it look like the head is sticking out, which it is. This character has a, you know, it's like a fox or something, right? So it's gonna have a snout, and it's gonna have, it obviously has a big jaw. So I would put shading underneath right here. And then for the jacket, I would probably put shading on a little bit more shading on the sides. I do see that you have a shaded color here, but it might look better. I'm just gonna try this really quick. Let's duplicate this, and then we'll, where's duplicate? There it is. And then we'll decide which one looks better. But I would probably, oh, let me turn on the symmetry tool as well. Symmetry options. Now we have a symmetry tool. It's right down the middle. And what we can do is just draw on one side and it'll duplicate what we're doing on one side to the other. So here I'm taking the darker color and I'm shading it, and the reason why it looks kind of odd is because that darker color is also here on the edge. So instead of trying to use a dark color here on the edge, I would use a lighter one. And then I would also probably shade under the head, and I like this really dark color, so I would maybe even use that underneath there a little bit more, and maybe something like this. And what I did here is I shaded a little bit under the arms. I know you wanted to have a collar, and maybe something like that will give it that collar look. And then for this belt, I like that you didn't just go completely horizontal, and it has this curve to it. The curve does make it look like the character is rounder, which is excellent. However, I think it would also be darker here on the near the edge. So I would probably shade, probably have it darker here near the edge. And this line is very thin, and it's hard to tell that it continues. So there's a little trick that you can do to make it look like this brown part is more connected. And what the trick is I would take this brown, go really, really light alpha, and put a little bit of that brown right here or right here. And what we're doing with that is we're smoothing out that sort of edge. And I kind of want to explain this to you in another way. So here I would take lighter blue and I would put it here and here, and that smooths it out. These are all the locations where you can put it to smooth it out, depending on how you want to smooth it. But basically, by adding these lighter versions of the color that is the outline or the detail, you smooth it out. And I feel like the belt here needed a little bit of that smoothing in order for it to look like it's all one piece. You know what I mean? I hope that made sense. I also noticed that you did some of that outline shading that I love to do, and to be honest, at first I didn't even notice. It's a little too subtle, so I would definitely go here and let me turn the symmetry tool back on and make these darker, these sections darker, and make maybe the top here a little bit lighter. But overall, you got the right idea. You got the right idea. So I think another thing that I would do is probably make it even darker under the chin here for there to be a shadow. So if I flip between these two, you can see the outline changes, and look at the ears. You can see that the ears now, they look like they have more lighting. But overall, your artwork is fantastic, and you're getting a really good hang of some really good techniques. So I don't really have too much other feedback for this. Let's move on to the next piece of art. So the next piece of art is a golem sent to me by Powell B. I like the colors in this golem. These two colors, it's a pretty nice mix. Are these nipples? You can't milk those. They kind of look like nipples to me. What do you guys think? So I think the nipples would be there and there, and I think I'm just gonna leave it there for now. We're gonna leave those nipples like that. So some of the feedback for this that I could give you is that I noticed there's a black outline here on the arms, but not everywhere else. Near the top of the head, that's pretty good. But for the arms, I would probably shade, give it a black outline here near the bottom. These locations right here. And then the legs, I'd probably give the legs a black outline too. Oops. Oh gosh, that was a big eraser. But the main tip I want to give you is how to do the lighting. So these shoulders being a lighter color here, this is fantastic. This is pretty good lighting. The light's coming from above and you shaded this. And however, with the arms, it's a little bit too simple. And what I mean by that is shading this side of the arm is fine. I would probably lift it up a little bit more, but this lower part, I would remove the shading. So this is kind of like underneath if the sun's shining from above, this part wouldn't really get light from underneath unless you wanted to have a very reflective environment. And then for this bicep, I would probably make this entire bicep a lighter color. And if you make this entire bicep a lighter color, you don't even need to do so much shading around it. So for example, if I remove those lines right there, the color itself, let me remove some of that. So the color itself, if you look at in the preview, shows you where that bicep is. You see that? So instead of just having one little side shaded brighter, make the entire bicep brighter. And you can sort of separate muscles this way. And then we can still go in. I think this is too close to the outline color. But we can still go in and shade sections of it. But I'm not going to, I'm going to pick a color that's a little bit darker, but not quite as dark as the one you had. So maybe an in-between like this. But I would only pick little sections where you would increase the, where you would shade. So I wouldn't outline the entire bicep, just have a couple of different areas, like, I don't know, maybe like over here or whatever, if you're trying to separate different sections of the body. For this center line where the abs are, I would probably make this entire part darker. I do like that there's shading on the abs. That's awesome. That's excellent. And I would shade in here, the inside of the body, just because this wouldn't really get a lot of lighting. So all of that would be, I think, should be shaded. And this part here looks a little bit like it's too much of the same color. So I think for the pecs here, they don't actually need to have the same level of shading as the biceps, the abs over here. And you could even remove some of that from the abs, because it makes the abs look a kind of a little bit fake if they have too much contrast. What I mean by that is, if you have this color next to this one, the contrast between them isn't as drastic as if you had these colors next to each other. And when you have these colors next to each other, it makes this look a lot brighter, which makes it look like it's sticking out a lot more. So I don't think, you know, abs don't stick out a ton, so I wouldn't make the contrast between the abs and the color around them quite as high as you had. I would do something a little bit more like this. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and change this bicep as well, so we can kind of see what it would look like with the technique I was describing. So here we go. We're gonna grab this color, and I think I'm gonna increase the size of the shading on the shoulders, just because that's where the majority of lighting would be hitting the head. Oh, I just noticed that there's probably a section here that could also have shading, because that looks kind of like, you know, the head's round. So parts of it would be brighter than others. And the reason why I'm shading the top is because the arms is because this is the side that I'd be facing upwards. And with the hands, I do kind of like how it's highlighted, how you have a highlight here near the fingers, but I would probably shade almost the entire hand and something like this, just to bring more attention to the hands. So since we made this shoulder have a larger shade on it, I would do the same on this side. And now you see it kind of makes the shoulders look bigger and bulkier since we made that highlight much larger. And also under the head, you could have a little bit of shading here. I hope that helped and steers you in the right direction. Basically, the tip I'm giving you is to make your highlights larger, and you can even highlight entire sections, like an entire muscle, you know, almost the entire shoulder, kind of just to emphasize that those things are large, or they're whatever. Yeah. So that way you don't have to use outline to try to separate it from other parts. Okay, so lastly, we have a submission here from Jazz. By the way, don't send me upscaled images. Send me the original size. When you send me the original size of a piece of artwork, it's going to look blurry like this. So on Twitter, if it looks crispy like that, you're probably sending me a format that is too large. Send me the original size, and on Twitter, it's gonna look blurry like this. But when I go to open image in new tab, it's gonna open it exactly the size that I need. So now I need to shrink this to get the right pixel density. As you can see, one of my pixels is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 times larger. So I think that means if I go to sprite size, I think I gotta divide this by 12. I'm not sure, let's try. We'll see. I'm gonna divide that and that by 12. And we'll see if that's the correct size. Yeah, it is. Math, dude. So I love the highlights and it's so shiny, but that's fantastic because you're trying to show that it's metal. However, I think parts of this are shinier than they should be. But basically what I would do is not have such a large highlight in some of these areas, especially because if parts of this armor are sticking up, it wouldn't really allow a lot of light into those sections. So I don't think we need to have a glare in these in-between parts. I would even go as far as to make those a lot darker. You know, maybe something like this. And then this highlight looks very straight. That's okay, but I would broaden the size of it, because if it's a tiny highlight, then it kind of just looks like almost like a sparkle, if you know what I mean. So for example, this shoulder here, I would make this highlight larger. I'm gonna go to lower the alpha, and I would kind of like we were doing with the muscles on the previous character. So now that I make this highlight bigger, it looks more like there's a range of reflection there. Instead of it just looking like a sparkle, it looks like there's a range of reflection in that piece of metal. And I would add a highlight to this right here as well, this piece of armor. Maybe not like that, but you get the point. Just somewhere in there, I think that a highlight would look good. It would make it look like it has a little bit more detail, like it has a little bit more grooves and stuff like that. Overall though, this is a good design. Your shading is awesome. I love how the outlines, they're pretty complicated, and you got the outline darker right here on the bottom and lighter up here. That's fantastic. And when I zoom out and you look at this, like, just wow, the outline work makes this look have so much more dimension, and the contrast in it is fantastic. So personally, I do think this is fine the way it is. However, if I was to draw this knight, I wouldn't have every piece of armor use this color right here that you have on the chest. So this color here, let me switch it to yellow and show you what I mean. I'm gonna have contiguous off. This color, oh wow, so this and this is different. So it looks like you need more color consistency, because even if I tried to change a few of these, like all of these look like they were the same color, but they're not. It's gonna make it really hard for you to use like the paint bucket tool or something, you know? Don't switch shades of color that frequently. This color is very predominant, and what I would do when coloring is I would sort of pick certain sections to have certain colors. So I think the chest here would overall have a lighter color, and then another section would have a darker color. God, I feel like I'm not explaining that very well, but let's say we were using these three blues, this one, this one, and this one, right? So if we were using these three blues as the base color, not the highlight, not the shade, as the base color for the head, I would use that color. Then for the body, for the torso, I would use this color, and then for the legs, I would use this color here. And basically what I'm saying is, this color here would still have a highlight and a shade. This would still have a highlight and a shade. This would still have a highlight and a shade. But by having the head, the torso, and the legs not use the exact same shade, it makes those three sections, first of all, it differentiates those three sections by color, but it also helps show that there's lighting coming in from above. So even though the armor is using gray, I would sort of have different shades of gray be the base for different parts of the body. I hope that helped, and I really want to show you guys that in another piece of artwork in the future. I might even draw something that uses this technique. If you want to be in a pixel art critique video, which I should probably do like every month, we should make this a thing, DM me, follow and DM me on Twitter. I'll see you guys next week. Devla.